Hi everyone, so today I'm going to show you how to make a scrunchie. I've learned probably over the last year that scrunchies seem to be a very popular project. I know when I was a kid we used to wear them all up our arm. I don't know if you guys still do that, but they are fun to make. They're very easy to make. It's a great project to use up your scraps. So I have a piece of fabric here. Okay, it's actually a little chocolate chip fabric, so I thought that was fun. And we are going to start by drawing a rectangle that is 3.5 inches wide and 22 inches long. So you need kind of like a skinny piece of fabric to do this. Now you can change the size of the rectangle depending on how kind of puffy you want the scrunchie to be. So 3.5 is just what we're going to start with. You can kind of see how that looks. You could go skinnier if you want a really thin scrunchie. You could also go fatter. I've had students do 5 inches and 6 inches even for the height of the rectangle. So it's really up to you, but you can see how this one looks. Again, it's 3.5 inches high this way and 22 inches long this way. So to draw this long skinny rectangle, we're going to start with just a basic straight edge. Even if you don't have a ruler and you just want to use some kind of straight edge that you have at home, I've actually drawn straight lines using books before. The thing is you won't be able to measure it, but if you have some kind of tape measure that you can use, you can get an idea. But this piece of fabric here, let's see. This piece of fabric is about 26 inches long. Okay, so it kind of gives you an idea. We're gonna go a little bit smaller than that. So you'll see how big it is once we cut it out. So we're gonna start by drawing a line on one side. And again, we draw on the back side of the fabric so that if you mess up, it's on the back. Okay, so since my ruler is only 12 inches long, I'm going to kind of calculate here where 22 is. So we have 12. We need 10 more inches. Oh, we're almost there. And if you did not do the tote bag project that I showed yesterday, you just want to make sure that when you draw the line and you extend it out, that you overlap as you're drawing. Okay, so you don't want to draw here and then move the ruler all the way up here like this. You want to kind of draw it and then move it up a little bit, draw a little bit more, and just kind of keep going like that. That way you don't accidentally draw the line crooked. Okay, so we're going to go 3.5 inches wide. So I'm going to line up on the ruler the 3.5 inch mark here with the yellow line and make a series of marks at the top. Okay, and then we'll connect the dots together. Okay, and then at the end, just give yourself a straight line at the end. Okay, once you've done that, you can go ahead and cut it out. Okay, so that is a 22 inch long strip here, 3.5 inches wide. Now when you sew it, we are gonna actually fold it in half, okay? And then we're gonna sew a 1/2 inch in from the edge. So you can kind of see once it's folded in half and sewn, it's not gonna be quite so wide anymore. So you can take the fabric, fold it in half so it's inside out, right sides together. So the good side's in the inside. And again, we want to make sure that we line up the edges, the raw edges of the fabric, so they go together over here. Then you can grab your pins and pin that edge together. Okay, now, the kind of funny thing we're gonna do, we are going to sew along this open edge where the pins are, okay? We are not going to sew the top of this, and we are not gonna sew the bottom of this. The other thing we're not gonna do is we're gonna not sew a little bit of this side, okay? So I'm gonna make a mark about, let's say, 2.5 inches in from the edge. It's right where my pin is. Okay, so what's gonna happen is you will start sewing at that yellow mark. So we leave the whole top open, and then we leave about 2.5 inches open here, approximately. It doesn't be exactly that amount. And then you're gonna sew start here, and you'll backstitch, and you'll sew all the way down till you get to the other mark, and then you would backstitch there, okay? So we're gonna leave a little bit of the side open and also the bottom open. I'm gonna go show you that now. Okay, so I've already threaded my machine for you guys so that we are ready to sew. And then we're gonna take our fabric here. We're gonna line it up like this along the edge of the presser foot over here, again to do the same 1/2 inch seam allowance that we normally do. And you're going to start at the mark here. Okay, so there's the yellow mark right where the pin is, if you can see that there. Okay, we're gonna start right there at the mark. And we wanna, again, make sure that we're sewing far enough in that it's not going to fray and fall apart. So it's not that it's so important that it's exactly 1/2 inch, but we just don't wanna be kind of falling off the edge of the fabric where it's gonna come apart on us. So we're gonna line up at the edge there, lower the presser foot down, do our stitch forward and back stitch. Stop to get the pin out. And again, as you're going along, you're going to be checking the edge of your fabric to make sure that those edges are staying together over there. Okay, now don't forget when you get towards the end that you're not going to sew all the way to the end. You're going to stop again at that yellow mark there. Okay, we're gonna backstitch. Okay, and we want to cut our tails off at both ends here. Okay, we go back to the beginning and cut those threads off there. Okay, nothing on the back. And then the next step is to work on flipping this right side out. So to flip this inside out, just like the tote bag project, you could sit here and just work on like kind of flipping the end down and then picking it out kind of inside out like this. Or you put your finger inside and kind of slide the inside up and out like that, okay? But we are gonna use a safety pin. So we take the safety pin here and hook it onto the end. It's a little easier because the end is open, so we can just kind of hook it on through a single layer. Close the safety pin. Okay, and then the safety pin is going to go back inside the hole, and we're going to take that end and we're going to push it inside. Like that. Okay, so it's kind of going inside there like that. So we'll push that in there, and then here's the safety pin. And again, we kind of slide the fabric onto the safety pin and then slide the fabric off this way. So now there's the safety pin, and I squish it up, and then I hold the safety pin over here on this side, I let go of this side, and I slide it off over here. So So keep doing that until the whole thing comes out the other end. There we go. Okay, now you're gonna see why we left those little ends open like we did. So we wanna make this into a circle, okay? So by leaving those ends open, we can take the edges here, okay? That edge there and that edge there, and we can sew them together. So you do wanna make sure that you're not like weirdly twisted or anything. Make sure it's straight like this. And then you're going to fold it in half and bring it together. Now it's a little awkward because what you wanna do is you wanna go from corner to corner, okay? We wanna sew across this whole edge, but it's all bunchy down here and kind of weird. Okay, so it's not easy to get the whole thing to lay flat at the same time, which is fine. You kind of sew a little bit and then flatten out the next part, sew a little bit and flatten it out and continue to sew. The whole time staying on the machine, but it's just a little bit awkward. So fold it in half, and then I would suggest pinning the corners together. Take that corner and match and pin it. And then take the other corner over here, match and pin it. Okay, so you can kind of see we're going to sew across like that. Okay, so I'm going to show you that next. So I realized when I came home to work on this video that one of the parts of the file was not working correctly. So I have actually gone back and I am redoing this part, but I'm actually now at home, so it might look a little different to you. Same sewing machine, new location. So in any case, we line up here at the beginning, and it's a little bit weird because it's all kind of bunchy over here. If I come in closer here, okay. So it's a little awkward, and you just want to make sure that you keep the fabric underneath nice and flat, because it's going to want to fold up on the back side and the front side, but the front side you can at least see. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and stitch, and back stitch, and then we're coming in on this corner here. So again, we make sure it's nice and flat, that it feels nice and flat here, and there's nothing folding up. I'm going to take out that pin and just hold those edges together with the tips of my finger. Back stitch. Okay, so once we cut it off, and you can see now we have our loop here, our ring, that we can put the elastic inside. And then what will happen is this hole will close over here once the elastic is inside, and we will sew that shut. Okay, so when you're ready, we're gonna put the elastic inside. So I went ahead and cut a 9-inch length of elastic. After I think you make one, you can determine if you like the final size of it, and you could always adjust this accordingly, but I would start with 9 inches initially. A good size elastic to use is about 1/4 inch. This one's actually 3/8 of an inch. I just had this on hand, but 1/4 inch is what I would prefer, but you could use 1/4 or 3/8. If you get too wide on the elastic, it doesn't function super well. However, if you're going to just literally wear it on your wrist, then you could use a wider elastic. But the more narrow elastics work better when you actually have to like twist it and put it on multiple times. If you kind of loop it twice, which some people do when they put their hairband in. So we're going to take the safety pin and we're going to hook it onto the end. Okay. And then we're going to start to push this through the tunnel the same way we did to push the fabric through itself. Now the one thing that's tricky is this is a very small piece of elastic. It's 9 inches long, and this is now 21 inches around because we've lost an inch from the seam allowance. So what I would suggest doing is taking a pin or an extra safety pin and taking the free end of the elastic and pinning it to the fabric where you're starting to insert it. So if you pin it onto here, like that, then when you go around, you won't accidentally pop it through and lose it. So we'll push that through just like we did before. Just be careful of this pin that you don't poke yourself on it. Okay. So I unpinned the end so that I have both ends ready to be sewn together. So at this point you can kind of see, I'm going to unsafety pin this. You can start to see what would the size of the scrunchie look like. Okay, and this is where you can decide if you want it to be different. If you make it too tiny, it actually makes it harder to sew the hole shut. So it's preferable to not make it too super tiny. And when you sew the elastic together, usually I like sewing things, the elastic like this, where it overlaps each other and it lays flat. But sometimes that can be really tricky if your elastic is tiny. And for a scrunchie, I think it's not a big deal if we just put the elastic kind of side by side like that, okay? And then just sew across the end of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you that. Okay, so we're going to take the two ends of the elastic. I'm going to kind of keep the fabric over here out of the way, kind of pulled tight out of the way. And then I'm going to take the two pieces of elastic and put it under the presser foot, like this. Oh, and they separated. Now you could pin it together and then just remove the pin as soon as you get the presser foot down. Now I'm actually going to sew a zigzag across this. You could do a straight stitch. The zigzag just kind of gives it a little more coverage, makes it a little bit stronger. But you could do a straight stitch and just make sure you sew it back and forth enough times. So we are going to go back and forth a few times. Okay. That should be good because the zigzag is a little bit heavier than a normal stitch. Okay, so it's nice and sewn together. And now we can see that the elastic is going to hide inside there. Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to close this hole. So if we wanted to lay a little bit more flat, we can open up the seam allowance here, okay, right there, and same thing on the other side. This will make it a little less thick when the layers get sewn together. Now we of course don't want to leave these raw edges hanging out, so we're going to fold that inside like that. Okay, so we tuck the raw edges in, and then we bring the seams together to match each other over here. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pin it there. Okay, like that. And then if you need to, you can put a few more pins. And we're just trying to kind of crease this edge, get these edges to line up with each other nicely. Same thing over here, kind of like stretch it out a little bit to get it to lay flat. Make sure the edges are tucked inside, and then we can put another pin over there. Get that thread off there that's dangling out. Okay, and then the last step is to just sew that hole shut. Now, if you're very particular about how your scrunchie looks, you could sew this by hand. We are just going to do a quick sewing on the machine, and we're going to sew it nice and close to the edge, because if you sew too far in, then the inside might pop out. It also leaves a weird lip at the edge if you sew too far in. So we're going to sew near the edge. Once it scrunches up, you don't really notice so much the stitching. So we're just going to do it on the machine. So we're going to go back to a straight stitch. Don't want to zigzag anymore. Okay, I'm I'm just going to check where my opening starts here, so I know where I am going. It'll be a little thicker when you go across the seam. So make sure that you that it keeps moving. It doesn't get stuck there or anything like that. And you should not be catching the elastic. At this point, the elastic is actually over here in the inside on mine, away from the edge. We're almost there. Back stitch. Okay, bring up the needle, press her foot, cut those tails off, and then kind of like squish it around here, and there is your scrunchie. Okay, so now that the scrunchie is complete, we have to try it out. See if it functions right. So I'm going to do a double loop on it, and actually pretty perfect size for me. Okay, so now I have a new chocolate chip hair scrunchie. My kids will really enjoy that. So enjoy, make tons of scrunchies. You just need small strips of fabric, so it's a great project. If you don't have elastic, you can reach out to Firecracker Fabrics to come pick some up, and just get a bunch so you can make a ton of them and wear them up your arms, or whatever you want to do. Give them to your friends, or any other siblings who might want them. Have fun.